This episode has been brought to you by our super generous supporters on Patreon.
It's estimated that by the year 2022, 1 in 4 shopping malls that exist currently in the US will shut their doors. Different sources call this phenomenon different things, but one citing the retail apocalypse of 2017 pretty much sums it up. There's even a Wikipedia entry for the term dead mall, which is a category more and more malls are falling under each year. If you do a Google image search for the term abandoned mall, a plethora of post-apocalyptic images flood your screen. Former atriums overgrown or full of dead plants, escalators covered in snow during the wintertime where once grand glass ceiling has collapsed, even an abandoned mall in Bangkok that has flooded and been taken over by a large population of exotic fish. Looking at these images, it's almost like being transported into a sci-fi novel about the future where most humans have ceased to exist. There's even a subculture of mall archaeologists that has popped up recently who explore and document these abandoned palaces of retail. So what happened? Why are all these once bustling centers of retail turning into ghost towns at such a drastic rate? While some of us might regard the disappearance of the shopping mall as just an appropriate death to mindless consumerism, malls were originally intended to function as just places for retail. The first iteration of what we think is an indoor shopping mall opened in Edina, Minnesota in the mid-1950s. It was the brainchild of Austrian architect Victor Gruen. He saw that after World War II and the advent of the suburbs, that American families were becoming more isolated and car-centric in their day-to-day lives. He wanted to create a space that he said would provide an opportunity for participation in modern community life that our town squares, much like the one he grew up visiting in Vienna, had provided in the past. In his vision, the mall would be a place for people to get out of their cars and escape the suburban sprawl he saw. A place for the community to come together and interact, hopefully filling a void sociologists of the time called a third place. That is, a safe and neutral public space outside one's work or home. A new kind of town square for a changing society. Especially with Minnesota's colder climate, that meant such a place would have to be indoors. In terms of attracting people to the mall and making sure they interacted in the central atrium, Gruen theorized that if you had 2 bigger name brand stores at each end of the mall, it would promote traffic throughout and sustain the smaller or local businesses in between, and ultimately promote more public interaction as well. Gruen coined these types of stores anchor stores. And so with his vision and construction complete, the Victor Gruen designed Southdale Center Mall opened its doors in 1956. Becoming the first fully enclosed, climate-controlled mall in the United States. At that time, the atrium in the mall was the largest indoor public gathering space in the United States, and the grand opening was attended by over 40,000 people. Initially, Gruen viewed the indoor mall as a huge success, and he spent the next decade traveling all over the US promoting his ideas. Malls were built during this time at an incredible rate. This was in part due to new tax laws that let those who built malls claim the cost of construction as a loss at a rate that was extremely generous. Basically, you could build a mall, take a huge tax write-off for a couple years, and then sell it for a profit. There was also a general revolt at the time against increasing property taxes, and cities saw malls as a great way to bring in new tax revenue. This led to malls being easily developed purely as a means for profit, and not necessarily because population growth dictated they were needed, especially in remote areas where land was cheap. All in all, an astounding 1,500 indoor shopping malls were built in the US between 1956 and 2005. In fact, ratio-wise, the growth rate of malls nearly doubled that of the population growth in the US between 1970 and 2015. This kind of retail growth was unprecedented worldwide, and currently in the United States there's around 25 square feet of retail per capita, whereas in Europe there's an average of around 2.5. What we are seeing now is a backlash to that unprecedented growth. In short, there's too much retail out there to sustain itself. In the midst of all this retail backlash, many of the Gruen coined anchor stores at malls are closing. In 2017, Macy's alone announced it would be closing 60 stores across the US. Symptomatic of the retail glut in America, a lot of these Macy's that are closing were within 10 miles of another Macy's. Without anchor stores to sustain them, many of a mall's smaller tenants can't survive and start closing their doors one by one. Another threat to malls is the prevalence of e-commerce. Whereas in the 80s and 90s, shopping malls were the best place to get all your shopping done in one fell swoop, that just isn't the case anymore. Because of all this, malls are closing at a very rapid rate. Mall visits declined by 50% between 2010 and 2014, with further declines reported each successive year since. Experts estimate that within the next 5 years, 300 of the US's remaining 1,100 malls will shut their doors. In the end, Victor Gruen saw his creation as a monstrosity, in that he believed his malls were draining life from local businesses in actual urban areas. In fact, later in his career, he became involved in urban renewal programs to reverse the effects that his malls were having, trying to apply what he had learned to bringing life back into the urban areas he loved. In the end, Gruen's malls never ended up being the idyllic centers of human interaction that he wanted them to be. But what are we losing if most of these malls close? For me, if they do, what I think I'll be losing is mostly nostalgia. Hanging out as a teenager in the food court, going Christmas shopping with my parents, or perusing the discount DVD section at a Suncoast Video. Even if Victor Gruen's vision didn't quite work out, if most malls close, I think I'll definitely miss them. So what do you think? Is the collapse of the shopping mall an inevitable progression in a new retail environment? If the mall in your town became a harbinger of the apocalypse, would you be sad? Is the mall in your town already closed? How do you feel about that? Let us know in the comments. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to us on Patreon. Since we never had any Anchor stores to begin with, it's pretty much the only thing that's keeping us afloat right now. You can also like this video, subscribe to our channel, check out our Facebook page, and our Instagram. And if you're already a Patreon supporter, thank you so much. You're the reason this show continues to exist. And thank you so much for watching.